Hey, good morning, Matthew readers. Do any of you bake bread? Because if you have made homemade bread, which I have maybe once or twice before, today's reading is going to make a whole lot more sense to you. I'm talking in particular about Matthew chapter 16, verses 5 through 12, where Jesus has a conversation with his disciples where it seems like they're really talking past each other. They're just coming off the heels of Jesus feeding 4,000 with literal bread. And Jesus is talking about yeast, or in the text it's called leaven, which would be like a sourdough starter. And the guys are still talking about bread, and Jesus says, I'm not talking about bread, I'm talking about the leaven of the Pharisees. So they're sort of mixing metaphors here in a funny, almost comical way. But I want to talk about this idea of yeast or leaven for a second. Jesus is warning them against the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And I think what he's doing is warning them about this way of being, this ideology that has crept into and infected the whole loaf of Israel. Again, he's using this language of bread as a metaphor. But think about this. I have some yeast here. This is the kind we use. Have you seen how tiny this is? I'm going to hold this up to my camera for you. Where's one? Like, it's tiny. They're like little dust particles. And he's talking about how something this small can infect and make an entire loaf rise or be a certain way. In this case, he's talking about it in a not so positive way. But it's interesting to me that the same word for yeast, when we talk about yeast or leaven, we talk about cultures. And that prompted me to think about what has infected, or what is the yeast that is affecting the culture around me. What is the yeast or the leaven that is affecting the culture that you're living in, that you're swimming in, that you're being informed by? And these things, these little ideas, ways of being, ways of talking, what you drive, what you wear, these things could be so tiny and so subtle, but they penetrate the entire culture that you swim in. So my question for you this morning, as we read about Jesus warning about the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, is what would he warn you about in your culture? Whether it's your neighborhood culture, your school culture, your office culture, your family culture. For me, one of the things is complaining. Like, a complaint is so small, often very justified. But think about how one complaint can change the dynamic of an entire conversation. Or another thing might be gossip. If I'm at dinner with a group of friends, how quickly one tiny little morsel of gossip can change and infect the entire group, the mood of the group. So, what's the yeast that's affecting the culture you swim in? And what yeast could you actually inject into your culture so that the rising effect is positive and not toxic in the way that he suggests the Pharisees and Sadducees are? And that's our reading for today. Hope you have a great day.